Hey everyone, my name is Goblin, and today I'm going to be going over which gods you should be playing in each role for the Smite 2 Alpha. I just came out a couple days ago, and I've been playing quite a lot, and we've seen a decent amount of all of these characters, so I would just want to give you an idea of what you should be playing going forward, and kind of how good each character is in each of these roles compared to their peers. We only have 14 characters so far, so there is a lot of flex roll potential because we just have a very limited character list. And then the off roll list will kind of become less and less usable as we get more characters further into the alpha. So we're going to start it off with on her main role, you're going to be carry, and off roll is going to be mid. Um, I'm going to rate on her as a good for both of these roles. I don't think he's the best carry in the game right now. He's not the best mid, but he performs in both roles pretty much equally. He's got a good build for both, and he'll be able to get the job done. Anubis, your main role is going to be mid. That's where I would recommend playing him. And your off role, I think his second best role is going to be solo. I'm going to put him in the good category for mid, and I'm going to put him in viable for solo. His mid lane is not as strong. He's not incredibly safe, but he has really good damage output. His solo is actually quite decent. Similar to Smite 1, you can get pressure in the lane and go for an invade or something. But again, you're not that safe, and in those late game team fights, those other solo laners are going to be a lot tankier and be able to output a lot more threat onto the backline specifically in comparison to Anubis. So you really have to snowball if you want to play him in solo. Athena, we are going to be putting support as her best role. No surprise there. And I think her second best role is going to be jungle. She can play solo as well, but I think that you should probably stick to these two is where she has the most value. She is going to be getting a great for support and a viable for jungle. I've seen a lot better performance from Athena in the support role. Being able to rotate, having that purple buff, giving your team the buffs. Her late game team fight actually feels really, really good. For jungling, she can keep up most of the time, but if she gets behind, she's in a really bad spot. You end up having to ult defensively, and her damage output is not quite up there with the other junglers. So it's good, but it's not going to be as valuable as support for her. Bacchus, I'm going to be putting support as his best role. And I think his second best role is going to be in the solo lane. I think solo, he is viable, but he doesn't get a lot of lane pressure. The build path is a little bit awkward for him as far as the items that we have right now. So he doesn't get a ton of lane pressure, but he can threaten the backline. However, his support, I think, is good. He performs well in lane. He can rotate out, put pressure onto the backline, set up for objectives. He does a good job of everything, but he's not quite as potent as Athena as far as I've seen. For Bellona, you definitely want to be playing her solo, and I think her second best role is actually an ADC. This is kind of cheese. I'm going to put it at viable, but if you get ahead with this and you build full auto attack on her, she can actually run the game. But again, it's harder to pull off. Her solo is good. She's not the best solo laner. She's a little bit weaker, I think, than compared to Smite 1 right now. But her items are pretty good. As long as you don't make any mistakes, she's going to perform really well. And those late game team fights are quite good for her. Okay, Cernunnos. Definitely want to be playing him ADC. I think his second best role is going to be mid. And I'm going to put Cernunnos as a great. This character is kind of overpowered. His ADC build is insane. He is shredding everybody, doing so much ability damage. I think mid is his second best role just because you get the most value out of using your ult in those mid 3v3 fights. Once you're, when you're grouping up with your jungler and your support, fighting over objectives, he gets a lot of value there. I think you build pretty similarly. However, Cernunnos is really, really strong right now. He can probably play jungle and solo as well, just as good as he can play mid. The only thing that gives him more value is that actually grouping up with your team. So he's going to be a good across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if this character catches a few nerfs in the coming weeks. Chaac, we're going to be having him for solo as well. He is performing great in the solo lane right now. And then he falls off a cliff for his next role. I think it's jungle, but I'm going to put this in the not good category. I think you should only play this god in solo. He is dominating the lane. He's dominating the team fights. Healing for so much, so tanky and hard to kill and does so much damage. And you just don't get any value out of that in the other roles. You really don't. He gets outpaced in farm in the jungle. He doesn't have the greatest ganks. He doesn't have good chase down. He can do really good damage, but I would just play him in solo only. Fenrir is going to be jungle, and I think his second best role is support. Now, I haven't seen him flexed very much yet, but in terms of his jungle, it's going to be good. He's very strong. He's going to be able to perform that role. And I think support is going to be a low and viable. The reason being is that in jungle, he farms really well, does a lot of damage, has CC, can set up for ganks. He's just an overall strong character. Support, he brings a lot of damage and CC, and you can build those active items and kind of move around the map and have all these effects and CC on the enemies, which is really good. Taking the purple buff is good as well. You get that power scaling for yourself and your allies. And just basically being able to set up for ganks as a support can be valuable. However, you have to be really careful in the lane. I don't think his solo lane is very good, and he can't really perform ADC or mid. So I do think this is his next best role. For Kukulkan, we're going to be looking at mid lane, and it is great. He is the best mid laner by far. Kukulkan is head and shoulders above all the other mid characters. He does so much damage, has a lot of safety. That red buff is really good on him. The build path is great. There is one item that's been disabled recently, but if they re-enable that item, fix whatever bug is on it, it is going to be even better. So he is outperforming every other mid laner. I'd say his second best role is probably going to be carry. However, you do not want to build him as a carry, and I'm going to put it as bad. And the reason that this is bad is because you should be building him full power, full ability damage, going in the mid lane every game. If you do want to play him in another lane, it should be in the dual lane as the damage character there, but you should just be building the same thing as you would in mid. And so then you're not going to be an actual ADC, and that's not going to perform that well. I think you should only play him in mid, but I think he is the best mid laner. Loki, we have jungle, and we have solo. And I think Loki is the best jungler. He does everything that you want the jungler to do. He farms well, he ganks well, he has strong chase down, he's hard to log down in a team fight. You get beads for free all the time. You don't need blink on this character, so he's very good at engaging with his ult. He just does everything you want a jungler to do. He's the best at it right now. I'd say his solo is probably viable. You can farm well on this character, and you actually have decent fight potential in the lane. Like, he can kind of keep up with the other solo laners. However, you just get so much more value out of jungle. I think solo is viable, but it's not great. For Neith, we're going to be looking at carry and mid, and I think she is very similar to Anhur. She performs both of these roles very adequately. I'm going to put her in the good category for both, and she just has good build paths for both. You can go high auto scaling, full strength, full attack speed. You can go high int scaling, full ability damage. She does both equally well. She plays both roles well. She's safe enough. She's actually gotten a lot safer, and her combo is a lot easier to pull off. Her ult is hitting really hard. The stun is super valuable. I think she's just a good overall character. Definitely performing, in my eyes, a lot better than she was in Smite 1. Odin, we want to be playing him in solo for the most part. I think he's good. He's a little bit less popular than some of the other options right now. But I've been playing him a decent amount. I think he's good. And it's just a little bit harder to find his build path. You do want to go a little bit of hybrid strength int to get the shield scaling and do damage and be tanky. And it just takes a little bit of figuring out. In terms of other roles, I think that he is going to be viable in the support role. And the reason for that is you want that double scaling. And the purple buff, if you pick that up as the support, and you get those, your shield is bigger, you do more damage with your 3, you can set up the cage. I think he's a decent support with the active items as well as an option. And you can build like a lot of health and prots on him, and it feels pretty good. For Ymir to me has not been performing well. I think you want to go support, and I think his second best is jungle, but I am going to give this a viable for support. He is vastly underperforming compared to the other two in my eyes, and I'm going to give this a not good for jungle. Maybe even a bad. Maybe even worse than Chaac. He doesn't survive that well. I don't think the active items do a lot for him. And his damage is fine. The wall buff is really nice. It feels fun. But I just have not seen very good performances out of Ymir so far. And in terms of playing jungle, his chase down is bad. His gank is not that great. You kind of have to go blink, and then you don't do very good damage. The magical items, the magic scaling items are just not as good for jungling. It's just a kind of a disaster for Ymir right now. I think maybe it'll take longer for players to figure him out, but he has not been doing amazing as far as I can tell. The one thing he has going for him is that with the way that the jungle is shaped, like the corridors and the paths, the wall is pretty valuable. But he's basically like a one ability character right now, as far as I can tell. For Zeus, we are looking at mid, and we are looking at ADC. And I think Zeus is good in mid. He's a bit different than Smite 1, the way that he works, but he's been doing pretty well. You do have some of the same safety issues, similar to Anubis. Kukulkan is really outperforming them just because of the safety, and the damage output is even better on Kukulkan. These guys have good damage output and not that good safety. In terms of ADC, you actually have a very reasonable build path for this, and I think it's viable. I don't think it's as good as something like Neith or Anhur, but I would put Zeus above the Bellona here. You can definitely do it. It's got a pretty good build path. This might even be a good. I'm going to change it. I think he's probably good in both. He has the same issues in both roles. Lack of safety, not a ton of mobility. But you have a stun now. You have really good damage. And if you have that attack speed and the mage ADC items that are in the game right now, you are getting really good scaling on your abilities and good scaling on your autos. You have proc hits. It's working out pretty well. So that is what I think you guys should be playing for everything. Definitely we have a clear winner in each role, being Athena for support, Cernunnos for ADC, Chaac in the solo lane, Kukulkan middle, and Loki jungle. Beyond that, I think that outside of these roles, you really shouldn't be dabbling too much. Like I said, Athena can solo. Maybe Fenrir can solo, but it hasn't been that good. You know, Odin might be able to jungle, stuff like that. But I would try and stick to this list and stick to the green here, honestly. It's going to be really key as we're learning more about Smite 2 to be picking strong characters so that you can really test the potential of the character, understand the roles better, and get a hang of the item store. All right, if you like this video, please drop a like. I'm going to be updating this as more characters come out, so keep an eye out for that. You can sub to my channel if you want to see that as soon as it comes out. And thank you for watching.